Williams Real Estate, and this is my business partner Derek Ryan in the back here. So the topic of today, we're going to be chatting about selling a house in today's market. Okay, so I'll make this as interactive as possible. I have some information that we can definitely go through together, but please, while we're having this conversation and while conveying this information, definitely feel free to pop out any questions that are on top of mind, because I want to make sure that we are making this time as valuable as possible for all of you. So my name's Caleb. Like I said, I've been selling real estate since for the last 14 years, since 2005. And just a little origin story, I got started into real estate, graduated from Westchester University with a marketing degree and had no clue what I wanted to do with my life. I actually got a Bachelor of Science degree in marketing, which is a BS degree, Bachelor of Science. So that's what I paid all that money for, a BS degree. And so I knew I wanted to be in business of some kind, I just didn't know what. My mother at the time was a real estate agent and had been in real estate for many years. And she said, Caleb, why don't you just get into real estate, get your real estate license, you can give it a try, and if you like it, great, you can stick with it. If not, you can always move on to something else. So I did that, got my real estate license, started working with my mother, Lori, as a buyer specialist on her team. And so the first year in the business, I crushed it. I sold 2 houses, and I was like, this is a lot of work, and man, this is not a lot of payoff for this. I don't know if I should hang out in real estate anymore. So I kept going, and in my second year, I started to kind of build up some momentum, and it started to become a lot more fun. It's like anything else in life, once you start to taste a little bit of success and kind of figure out what the heck you're doing, it becomes a lot more enjoyable. So my second year, I think I sold 12 or 15 houses or something like that. And so I kept building on that momentum, and then right as I started building up this momentum, then the real estate market completely crashed in 2007, 2008, 2009, all that stuff. So at the time, it was really, really tough getting through that period, and it was awesome experience because I learned how to sell real estate and how to work with my clients even in the toughest times. And so that, I think, really helped build me as a stronger real estate agent during that time. So I'm glad that time is over, and yet it was, I can look back on it and be really, really grateful for it. So our team, the Chris and Caleb team, we're based out of Keller Williams in Exton. We sell homes all over this area. Derek is actually originally from Phoenixville, still lives in Phoenixville today. So we do have a strong presence here in the borough and in the greater Phoenixville area. So we did sell 173 homes last year, so we're one of the top producing teams in the area. We've got 10 people on the team right now, and what I do is I work exclusively with our clients that are selling their homes, so I'm what they call a seller specialist, and then Derek back there works as a buyer specialist. So I thought it would be good to get a little bit of input from him a little bit later on, because who better to give feedback on the home selling process than somebody who's working with buyers every single day and getting them through homes and helping them negotiate and that kind of thing. So, any questions so far? All right, awesome. So let's get started here. How's the market? I hear that question all the time. If you're a real estate agent, that's like the #1 question. How's the market? People always ask me that. And how do I answer that question? Well, I give the worst answer you could possibly give to somebody who asks a question. What is the thing you hate? What is the thing you hate hearing when somebody asks? You ask them a question, they say, "It depends." I know, but it depends, right? The worst thing you can tell somebody. It depends, but it really does depend. There's 2 really, really major factors that it's going to depend on in most cases. I mean, there's more than these 2, but the biggest 2 that we can talk about are price range and then also school district. So in this area, school district really drives a lot of demand for a specific property that we're talking about. So obviously, school district you have no control over. Your property is in whatever school district that it's in, and that's what it is. Price range, you have some degree of control over, because you do have the opportunity to choose the price that you're going to ask for the house. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that, shall we? So I prepared a graph for today's conversation here. And so what this really is what we call an absorption ratio. Okay, it's kind of complicated. I'm going to walk you through this and kind of tell you a little bit more. So this is active and closed and supply of homes in terms of months. So I broke it down. This is all Phoenixville school districts. So some of you may be in Phoenixville, some of you may be in different school districts. We can certainly do this for whatever school system your property is in. So I broke it down in price ranges. It's 0 to 200,000. The blue bar is how many are on the market today. Those are actives, okay? And you can see there's a big difference. Obviously, the most supply is in the 300 to 400,000 range. There's 17 homes on the market currently. And then you can see it, it kind of ramps up and then it starts going down. And then the red number is the average number of sales per month over the last 6 months. So in this price range, under 200,000, there's 6 on the market, and on average, there's 8.5 closing per month. So what that tells us is there's 0.7 months supply of inventory on the market. So that is an extreme seller's market. There's less than 1 month supply of inventory on the market in Phoenixville. It's very similar here to the $200,000 to $300,000 price range as well. So again, same deal, definitely an extreme seller's market. Things start getting a little bit more evened out as you get to 300 to 400,000. So you have 17 on the market, 6.8 are selling, so you have 2.5 months supply of inventory. And then 400 to 500,000, you have 3.5 months supply. 500 to 600,000, about 4 months supply, and then you see a huge difference there. As soon as you hit 600,000 in Phoenixville School District, the supply of inventory goes from 4 months to 8.5 months. So that's a huge jump. What you're seeing there is that's kind of like the price point at which, okay, you go from a seller's market to a buyer's market in one fell swoop there. So why is this important? If you have a home that's selling for $600,000 plus, you're probably hearing all your friends and neighbors and coworkers saying, the market is hot, it's a great market, we're getting multiple offers, which is all true for these people, but as soon as you hit this number, that stops becoming true. This is much more of, this is like the definition, I'll show you in just a second here, but this is actually 8 months supply and over is considered to be a buyer's market. So these people are actually in a slight buyer's market. What questions do you have on that information? Yes?
Is that just Keller Williams information?
No, this is all real estate sales.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, good question. Any other questions about the graph here? Okay. So this is the kind of the definition of a buyer's market versus a seller's market. So if you have less than 4 months supply of inventory, that's going to be a seller's market, which means the sellers have more control of the market than buyers because there's low inventory. If you have 5 to 8 months supply of inventory, that's considered to be a balanced market. And then anything over 9 months supply of inventory is really a buyer's market. So that last price range was 8.4. So that's like kind of right in between a buyer's and a balanced market. So in most areas and price points, we're seeing a seller's market or a balanced market. There are definitely some areas and price points that are going to be in a buyer's market still, even though the market is hot right now. Yes?
Is there any particular reason why there's few homes in the lower price range, and how long do you think that inventory will remain very low in that price range?
Yeah, the reason why there's that number, it's just, it's simple supply and demand, the reason why the numbers are so low. The reason why the numbers are so low, and I'll see if I can refer back to that slide so you can see that. So, yeah, so like under 200,000, the reason why there's 6 on the market and there's 8.5 that are selling per month. So that means that, there's almost nothing on the market in that range. And what all that means is there are fewer sellers out there willing to sell in that price range than there are a pool of buyers that are looking to purchase in there. Now, what creates that? A lot of different factors. It's kind of hard to say.
Could it be possibly
yes.
because people that can afford that price range are trying to pay off their college loans, or possibly they are not employed? There's other factors that could possibly affect that.
Yeah, well, if that was the case, then you would see this slowing down, but this is actually a really, really fast pace of sales, right? So if people were having trouble getting mortgages because they're paying like college loans and stuff, this would actually, this number right here, this 0.7 would be really high, almost like you see at the end of the spectrum there. Yeah.
I would say it's flippers buying those houses.
Yeah, it might be. It might be flippers or people who are looking to buy and hold
sell
it.
them for the next price range.
Or they may be looking to just hang on to them as well, you know, as rental properties and that kind of thing. So, Doug, you have anything to add on that?
What is the interest rate for mortgages now? If you don't want to discuss that, you know.
Yeah. Oh no, it's fine. What are rates at right now?
It's about 4.125 is the going rate today.
For a 30-year.
For 30-year fixed mortgage, if you get a 15-year, it goes lower than that because the higher the likelihood that you're going to pay back the loan. And then for a lot of people with credit, that's average. It might be like 4.25, and then with poor credit, it might be about 4.5 for the interest rate today.
Right, which is still extremely.
Are appraisals hard to get today? Because I know at one point there were a lot of people got approved for the appraisal went through, but then before the closing they had another appraisal. How are the banks filtering that process of appraisal?
Yeah, so typically there is only one appraisal that's done. I do know in some circumstances if it's a very unique property or a property that is selling substantially over what other ones in the area, maybe it's very, very over improved compared to the neighborhood or something like that. Sometimes a bank will want to get a second appraisal done at that point. We haven't had a ton of appraisal issues recently, but that's always a risk. If you're in a really hot market and you're getting multiple offers on a home or something like that, if you're the seller, you can drive the price up and up and up, but if that buyer is getting financing for the property, it still has to appraise. And so that appraiser, that's going to be working for the bank, their job is to make sure that that buyer is not overpaying for the house. And so I've had circumstances before where I've told my sellers, look, we're in a multiple offer situation, we've got 5 offers on the house or something like that, the price is selling for higher than the asking price. I say, that's great, and hopefully we can get you that price, but it is going to be determined on what the appraisal comes back at. So, if let's say the house sells for $300,000, but it only appraises for $290, then what do?
You gotta reduce your price.
That's one option. Yep, you can either have to reduce your price, so instead of $300, being willing to accept $290. You can negotiate with the buyer. So a lot of times what we'll do in that circumstance is say, hey, look, there's a $10,000 gap between what we agreed on and what the appraised value is. Let's meet halfway. So as the seller comes down $5,000, the buyer comes up $5,000. Challenge with that strategy is for every dollar that the property does not appraise, and we ask the buyer to bring that to closing to make up that difference, they have to have that money in cash to be able to do that, because the bank isn't going to lend any extra money on that. So in that circumstance that I gave you where it appraises for $10,000 under asking, then the buyer has to come to closing with an extra $5,000. So and then sometimes we as the sellers we say, hey, look, we agreed on $300,000, we want $300,000 for the property. At which point, the buyer has the right to come up with the $10,000 or the right to get out of the contract and get their deposit money back. So most of the time, if we do have a discrepancy with the appraisal, we're able to negotiate it out and get it figured out. But that can be something that can be a challenge for sure, especially in those multiple offer situations. So, all right. Any other appraisal questions?
Who is it that asks the bank to do the second appraisal?
The bank would request for one to be done.
For the person who signed the agreement of sale, their bank
Yeah.
is going to ask for a second.
Right. So a
For
lot
what
of
purpose? To lower the price?
no, just to make sure that they're getting the correct value from it. Yeah. No, I mean, it could be. I mean, yeah. So the bank is the one, when you say you're buying a house, you say, hey, I just bought a house. Well, if you finance it and you put 10% down, the bank just bought 90% of the house and you bought 10% of it. So it's a different way to look at it, but I mean, that's the way the banks look at it. Obviously they want to protect their interests and make sure the house is actually worth, what the buyer's paying for it, not
You
more.
said there was already a first appraisal.
What I was saying is it's extremely rare. Probably in my real estate career and doing this for 14 years, I probably had maybe 2 situations where there were 2 appraisals that had to be ordered, and they were weird properties. And what I mean by that is, like, you know, a farm or something like that, or like a really old historic home on like, you know, 5 acres or something like that. So it's very uncommon to have to get 2 appraisals done, but it does happen every once in a while.
Right.
Yeah. So. Yes.
How do you determine the selling price, or are you going to talk about that later?
Yeah, we can talk about that now. Yeah. So so I'm a listing agent. I work with sellers, and one of the most challenging things to do is to determine the appropriate asking price for the property, right? So the goal there is we want to get the best price we possibly can for the seller, and we also want the house to actually sell, right? So what happens is a lot of people will make a mistake of overpricing the house to begin with, which ends up costing them money in the long run. And so, you know, I have a lot of clients that come to me and say, Caleb, well, you know, I know the comps are here, and I know that, you know, the recent sales are selling for this, but, you know, my house is nicer, and we should definitely list it for higher. We can always come down later. And that is true. You can always come down later, okay? The challenge, though, is this. When your house hits the market, that's when you have the most interest and the most showings on it, right at the very beginning, okay? And the problem is, if we overprice it right at the very beginning, you know, anytime you're selling your house, you're entering a contest, right? It's a price war and a beauty contest. And so what I mean by a contest is you're competing with all the other homes that are on the market in that area and in that price range. And so when we go on the market, and if the price is too high, people will, if it's a little bit high, people will still come look at the house. You'll still get showings on it. The challenge is, if they look at 10 to 12 other houses on average before they make an offer on one, are they going to walk through your front door and say, wow, compared to everything else we've seen, this is a good value. This is a lot of house for the money that the seller's asking. Now, when people do that, when they see the value there, that's what causes them to move forward and actually make you an offer. If it's priced too high, it might be a beautiful home. They say, yeah, the condition's great, but you know, there's better values out there for us, right? So if we price it too high in the beginning, and the first couple weeks go by, maybe you get 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 showings, but you don't have anyone making an offer, that's an indication the market is telling us that the price is too high at that point. So what I'd like to do is, you know, there's not one way to price your house. There's not a right way and a wrong way. There's different strategies that you can use when pricing your house. One strategy is what we call like a highball method, which basically is like, look, I have the most upgraded, most maxed out house on the entire block. Okay, my house is nicer. If it's legitimately nicer than all the other homes, and we can prove that, then we should go, you know, in any kind of market, you always want to price ahead of the market. So if the market is going up, and it's like a strong seller's market in here, we can afford to overprice the house a little bit. You overprice the house over here a little bit, you're going to be on the market for years, right? So it's very good to understand, you know, what kind of a market you're entering into first. That's going to impact your pricing strategy. And so going back to the highball pricing strategy, if you have really a really maxed out beautiful home, we can list it for higher than what the other comps in the area are selling for. But if your house is just like everything else that's selling, and we try to list it for $15,000 more than everything else, well then it's just simply going to sit on the market. And it doesn't matter how great your real estate agent is, it's not going to, you know, be a good enough value to cause the house to sell.
Why wouldn't buyers make an offer that's a little less than the?
They could, but why wouldn't they make an offer on something that's $15,000 less that's just the same? Because then they can get a better discount on that thing that's already $15,000 less, right? So if on average a buyer's negotiating a $5,000 discount on a property, and you're $15,000 more than the other one, now they can get, you know, even lower, right? So it's just, you know, it's looking at things. When you're selling a house, it's really hard to step back and try to look at it from the eyes of a buyer, and that's, I think, what a really good agent is going to help you to do, while not leaving any extra money on the table for you, right? So I talked about the highball pricing strategy. That's if you have a beautiful home that has some unique features and is very, very upgraded. The other strategy you can use is just a simple market value strategy, right? Okay, and that's we look at the comparable homes in the area, and depending on where the house is and that kind of thing is how we determine what those comparables are. But the bottom line is this: when I look at pricing a house for my clients, I try to look at it from two different perspectives. One from the buyer, because obviously the buyer is going to be the one coming in and making the offer. Second was from the appraiser, okay? Buyer and appraiser, they're going to be looking at things differently. Buyer is going to be very much emotion driven. They're very much going to be concerned about upgrades and things like that. The appraiser is going to be much more concerned about square foot, you know, like upgrades that they can, you know, charge on they give upgrade, like for a finished basement or for a redone master bathroom or some of these other things. Now those things are definitely going to appeal to a buyer as well, but staging is going to make a house worth a lot more to a buyer. Staging is going to make no difference to an appraiser. They're looking at things from a surely mathematical, cold hard facts type of situation. Whereas the buyer, they're looking for a feel. They want to walk in the front door and feel like, oh wow, this is an awesome place where my family and I can live for the next, you know, many, many years. So that market value strategy, we're going to pull comparables, you know, within a couple mile radius of the house that are like comparables. What do I mean by that? If you have a two-story home, I'm not going to compare your house to a ranch, a one-story, okay? Even if that house was sold next door, it's not a comparable. An appraiser would never use a ranch and a two-story, so I'm not going to use a ranch and a two-story to compare your home. You know, if you live in a twin, I'm only going to compare it to twin homes. If you live in a townhouse, I'm only going to compare it to townhomes. We're going to look for similar bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage as you know, similar as possible. And sometimes it's very easy to tell what the property's worth. Other times it's more nuanced and more challenging. You have to dig deeper and spend more time. So once we've done that market analysis, then you know, we'll see what homes are selling for, and then I'll talk to my clients about what a recommended range is. I give you the advice, and then my clients decide what they want to do in terms of the pricing. The decision is always my clients'. If my clients are making a mistake, in my opinion, I'm going to tell them that, but it's ultimately their decision to price the house wherever they want to. And then last is the strategy that you can actually price the house a little bit lower than market value. If you're in one of these areas like this where the market is that hot, you could definitely price below market value and you're going to get multiple offers on the house. It's pretty much, you know, I can't say it's a guarantee, but it's a very, very high likelihood to do that. So when you do price it lower than what some of the most recent comparable homes are sold for, buyers see that as a great value, they swarm to it, and the price ends up going up instead of going lower. So any questions on those three different pricing strategies? The high ball, market value, and then slightly below market value?
So
Yes.
when does the inspector get involved? That's the one who comes before it's actually sold. So that could change,
Yes.
because if something they find isn't really right or good,
Right.
it could change what you have to pay or,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so one of the things that I recommend, how many of you have been in your house for more than 15 years? Everybody, okay. So if you've been in your house for more than 15 years, I do typically recommend to get a pre-sale home inspection done, okay? Definitely do not have to do one. However, I don't know about you, but when it comes to money and it comes to finances, I don't like big surprises. I just don't. I don't like that. So I do recommend, if the house hasn't been sold in 15 years, to get a pre-inspection done. That way you know if there's any major issues, you're going to know what you're getting yourself into. And you can also market the house as being pre-inspected, okay? So what that means is, when you're showing the house, you can have a copy of the inspection report sitting there on the kitchen table and saying, hey, here, I'm putting all my cards on the table. Here's what happened during the inspection. And then, you know, it's up to you to decide if you're going to address some of those items before, you know, you have a buyer under contract. If there's some stuff that's kind of scary or, you know, safety issues or something like that, you're probably going to want to address that before you get the house on the market. Some of the more minor stuff you can probably just, you know, because some buyers might not really care about it. Has anyone ever seen a home inspection report before?
Yeah.
They're scary. They're like 75 pages of all the things that are wrong with your house, okay? So, you know, I'm in the business. I've been doing this for 14 years. I bought a house last year, and I looked at the home inspection, and I thought, man, if I wasn't in the business, this thing would scare the heck out of me. So, I mean, they're very thorough. They're very detailed. But that's, again, if you're working with a skilled negotiator who's handling the sale for you, that's when they're going to go to bat for you and explain, you know, what should be done, what shouldn't be done, and negotiate it. It's all negotiable, right? So when we talk about home inspections, what we really focus on are material defects. Has anyone ever heard that term before? A material defect is basically something that's a safety hazard, so something that could potentially hurt somebody that's living in the house, or something that is broken, right? Something that's not operating the way that it's designed to be. So an example of a material defect would be, you know, your heating system doesn't turn on when you turn the thermostat on. That's a material defect. The thing's meant to heat your house, right? That's a material defect. Now, if you have an old heating system that's, you know, 25 years old and it works just fine, that's not a material defect. So a lot of times if you're working with a realtor who doesn't really kind of understand the difference there, you might get a buyer who comes through and on inspection they say, well, the heater's really old, so you know we want a new heater. And if you're not working with a good real estate agent, you might say, okay, well, yeah, we need to give them, no, we don't need to give them a new heater. So we can negotiate with them and say, hey, look, yeah, you might need a new heater in the next couple of years, and we'll throw in a 1-year home warranty with the sale of the house to cover you if it happens in the first year. You know, so we do some things like that to, you know, allay a buyer's fears and keep them from moving forward, but not have you, you know, have to come up with a lot of money to do repairs like that. So.
Yeah, one question I had is roofs. Okay,
Yes.
so say in my case, I got a 20-year-old roof, which is fine, no leaks or whatever, but as a buyer, I look in 20 years, you got a 24-year-old
Right.
roof on it. So I guess you could negotiate up or down or...
If the roof is not leaking, I consistently tell my clients who are selling their homes, do not replace it. The only reason I would ever ask them to replace the roof is if it really, really looked bad. Sometimes you have a 20-year-old roof that looks like it's 30 years old and like the shingles are starting to peel
they're coming up and all,
they're looking really bad. So as long as it looks okay, I would not replace it. I would say, hey, look, we're probably going to have that conversation after the inspector comes through, but it's definitely not a material defect, right? So in situations like that, you might ask, you know, they might ask for a credit towards repair of a new roof that might need to be done in a couple of years, rather than replacing it. You know, if we can get away with negotiating a couple $1,000 or
right.
sometimes you get away with nothing. Sometimes the buyer says, okay, it'll need to be replaced in 5 years. Okay, I can deal with that. So
Also, I guess there'd be a lot of competition. If there's a lot of interest in your house, somebody's nitpicking you and somebody isn't.
right.
You know,
Right.
That's also...
Yeah, and that's one of the benefits if you do get yourself into a multiple offer situation. You know, we get into situations where sometimes we can, a buyer will agree to waive the inspection. So they'll say, all right, well, I'm not going to do an inspection on the house. Now, as a buyer, that's kind of a risky thing to do. As a seller, I mean, that's definitely something that's in your benefit because you know you're not going to have to negotiate anything further at that point.
Right.
So, yeah.
Would that be a reason to not do the pre-inspection, or would you still recommend doing that?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. What are your chances of getting a multiple offer situation on your house? So that's one of those things you really have to kind of look at your individual circumstance and kind of look at the likelihood of, okay, am I in one of these groups or even in this group? You know, if you are, you might want to decide not to do that, right? That being said, you know, so to get a pre-sale inspection is probably around $400. Okay, so it's not cheap. It's not cheap to do it. However, if you don't do it, and most buyers are going to want an inspection, I'd say probably 90% of the homes we sell have a home inspection on them. And if you are going to have a home inspection, to me the $400 is worth it because you're going to go into it knowing what the major issues are. In most cases, whoever buys the house, even if you get a pre-sale inspection, will probably get their own home inspection done. That's simply because a lot of times they just want to make sure that it was a legit home inspector, like, you know what I mean? So I think that when you get a pre-sale inspection done, maybe sometimes they think, oh, well, is this like your cousin that just inspected your house that's a home inspector and he just like said everything was fine and it wasn't? So, you know, so I think there's a high likelihood that that may happen. But I have definitely sold plenty of homes before where the buyers said, hey, like, we're not going to do a home inspection because you already provided one. I have one in Kimmerton right now that's that exact situation. There was a previous buyer, the contract fell through with it. The next person who's buying it said, hey, we'll use their inspection. We're fine with that. So, any other inspection questions?
How do you find a good inspector? Like,
Yeah, a recommendation from your realtor is a good
Okay.
place to start. If you need some recommendations, definitely you can chat with me afterwards. We've got some good inspectors that we can,
Okay.
recommend to you. Yeah. So. Any other questions on inspections?
Well, one of the things I heard is, like, we have an older house, it's like built in 1929. We haven't really done much, we've done little things,
Sure.
but we don't, and we're at the point now where we could start doing some things, but we wondered, we're not sure how long we're gonna stay in it. Right now, we're staying in it.
Right.
So I thought, I said to my husband, we should probably get that pre-inspection to know what should be done before we do anything, and then
Yeah.
we can focus on what should be done in order for it to sell as well as make our
Right.
lives comfortable.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to do it. It'll help you prioritize. That kind of leads me into another conversation about staging homes, which is something that we do on my team. I do hire a professional stager to consult with my clients, just to give them a good plan of how to prepare the house for sale when they are ready to sell. And I love having my stager meet with folks who are, a year, 6 months, even 2 years out from wanting to sell their house. Because if you call me and you say, hey Caleb, I want to get my house on the market in 3 weeks, it's pretty overwhelming to have a stager come in and tell you what can be done to the house to prepare it so that you get the best price possible. Now I will tell you, with my stager, she'll come in and she'll give you the recommendations, like, in a perfect world, this is all the stuff I would do, right? And then you take that information and you determine, based on my time frame and my budget, what's realistic, right? So don't feel like you have to get every single thing done that she tells you. However, the clients that do most of the things that she recommends end up selling faster and for more money. So it's always kind of that, that analysis that you have to do in terms of, okay, do I want to sell my house for the absolute maximum amount of money that it can, and am I willing to put the hard work, time, energy, and effort into that? Or do I want to just do some of the stuff and, maybe not sell for the peak, but still sell for a pretty good price? So.
But you're also paying to fix it up, right? So
Yeah.
what-
And there's a lot of things when you go to sell your house that are simply not a good return on investment. So like, a lot of people will tell me, say, hey, should we finish our basement before we put the house on the market? No. Finishing your basement, unless you're in like a tiny house, finishing your basement before you put the house on the market is probably going to have one of your lowest return on investment. There are very few things that you can do to your house that you'll get more money than you put into them. However, some of those, like painting and carpet, or painting and flooring, are probably the two biggest things that make a difference. Because, when you think about it, you got the 4 walls of whatever room and what's on the floor, and like that's the majority of the things you're looking at when you're looking at a house. Paint is pretty inexpensive, even if you have a professional do it. If you do it yourself, obviously it's even less expensive. One of the things my stager does is she helps my clients pick out warm, neutral colors that will not look sterile and like bland, like a pure builder's white that just looks kind of too sterile and too bland. But will be warm but neutral, so it's not really nobody's gonna move in and think, oh, I can't deal with this color any longer, right? But it'll make the house appeal to the largest number of buyers possible.
So with
Yes.
carpet, I've heard, like most people say, change the carpet, but then you end up putting in like not the highest quality carpet, then people end up ripping it out, putting in what they want.
That's okay.
So it seems
Yeah.
like a waste which is better, that or
Yeah.
give them money toward carpet?
No, I get that question literally all the time. It's always better to put the new carpet in, and here's the reason why. People, when they go through the house, they want, and people work a lot these days, most people do not want to buy a fixer-upper, right? And so if people come in and they see a carpet that is stained or very worn or something like that, it kind of speaks to them and they think, man, did this person take great care of their house, right? So it's like almost the same thing as if you were going to buy a car or something like that was a couple years old. It still could be a great car, but if it looked kind of worn, you think, man, do these people like take good care of this car? Like, did they ever change the oil? And, you know what I mean? It's the same type of thing. So we don't want to give people any reasons to not make an offer on the house. And for something like the carpet versus the carpet allowance, and I have people say the same thing and say, oh, well, what if they don't like the color? I say, just pick a really neutral color. Nobody's going to hate it. Maybe they're going to say, oh, I need to rip that out and put, I need to put mauve carpet in here because I love mauve carpet. Well, at least they can deal with that color carpet that you chose for a couple of years. And I don't know about you, how many of you have something in your house that before you bought the house, you swore you were going to change it in the first year that you were in the house, and now it's 20 years later and you still haven't changed it?
In the bin.
Right? I think most people have a little something like that. So it just goes to show that, you know, even if you switch out that carpet and they don't love it and it's not their first choice, if it's neutral, they'll deal with it. It'll be so.
Is there a preference of a carpet or wood floor?
Buyers, by and large, would prefer hardwood floors to carpets. That being said, in most cases, it's not going to be worth the money to put in hardwood floors in terms of what it's going to cost in terms of like replacing a carpet versus replacing a hardwood. You know, there's a lot of different flooring options out there right now. There's vinyl plank floors that look actually really, really nice. There's some really amazing laminates that they make out right now. So, I mean, carpet is a totally fine choice, but there's a lot of other compelling choices out there as well that are, you know, they're still going to be more than carpet, but not significantly more in most cases. Yes?
What is the best approach to decluttering? Because I heard that a lot of times it's not necessarily the style of the home or whatever. Sometimes you just have to remove a lot of furniture, or is it better to show a house photos?
Yeah, it's better to have some furnishings in it, but probably a lot less than what you're living with in most cases. So a lot of what staging is, it's decluttering and depersonalizing your house, which can be kind of tough to do because it doesn't feel quite like your home anymore when you're doing that. And yet, you know, that's kind of when we're preparing it to be someone else's home in the future. So it's kind of, you're trying to kind of just getting that process going. But yeah, decluttering and depersonalizing the house is really, really big. It's going to make the rooms feel much, much larger, and it's going to not distract people if you have a lot of different knickknacks and things like that.
How about pictures? You would gotta get your pictures down too.
Family pictures, yeah, I would take those down. Yeah, yeah. And the reason why people always say that, you know, people sometimes get kind of like borderline offended when you tell them that. And it's not because you don't have a beautiful family. It's because what we want to have happen is we want the buyers to walk in the house and start picturing their family living in it. When they see pictures of you and your family, it's someone else's house. It's not, they're not picturing themselves living in it as much as they would.
Yeah, because I got a lot of pictures on it, and I guess take them down, I guess spackle everything and paint it, right?
Yeah, it's best to do that, and it's not, you know, we don't tell people, hey, look, don't have anything on your walls. You know, we do like to keep some artwork on the walls, you know, but just kind of minimalistic, you know, like I said, less is more. But those are things that, you know, my stager excels at those types of things. That's not really my cup of tea, so I trust a professional in that regard. So, yes?
How can you tell when a person is truly ready to sell, and how do you bring them to that awareness? It could be very painful.
Yeah. Whew, that's a good question. I think they need to come to that realization themselves. I can't help somebody sell a house that they're not prepared to sell.
So
you know?
Do you ever walk away from listings?
Occasionally, but not, I mean, not usually. Usually people have me out because they've made that decision that they're going to sell the house. Sometimes I meet with people who are kind of on the fence and kind of teetering and, you know, deciding what they want to do, and that's totally fine. I always see myself as somebody who can provide information, and so if I provide people information about what's going on in the market, what their house is likely to sell for, and what they should do to get the house ready and all that kind of stuff, and ultimately they decide, we're not ready to do it. Well, that's fine. I mean, I help them make that decision. But I think that is one of those things. Moving is such a commitment. There's so many moving parts. It's so much work. It's so much time, effort, and energy that if somebody's not fully committed to it, it's a lot of work to go through if you're not really, really committed to making that happen.
Yeah.
So.
I donated a lot of stuff to the thrift store.
Yeah.
And as my kids moved out, I gave them the furniture. So bedrooms that don't have beds in them because they took.
And that's totally fine.
I was wondering, should I just get temporary stuff or just leave it?
Nah, you're fine. I mean, the most important thing is like your master bedroom. You definitely would. I mean, in a perfect.
It has to be lived in. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I sell homes that don't have a stick of furniture in the whole place. Like they're rental properties. Their tenant moved out. Blank. Okay. That's not the ideal way to sell a home, though. It is best if you don't have furniture in the secondary, third, fourth bedrooms, not really a big deal.
Just
But having that
clean it
master
up,
bedroom,
yeah.
yeah, just having it clean and presentable is fine. The master bedroom is really important though, because that's whoever is buying the house is going to be living there, so that's important to set that up right. All right, let's keep it moving here. We touched on so many other things that I have in this presentation that probably only a couple of these things are going to be super important. So I just outlined some tips for selling. So number one, hire a realtor who's a local expert. So any realtor that's going to be giving you advice on how to price your house and that kind of thing should really have the information that I showed you earlier in terms of that graph. That's really going to tell you what's going on in that market, and that's really going to be important to helping you choose the right price for your house. If we are just pricing based on the homes that sold in the last 6 months without looking at the absorption ratio and how quickly the market's moving, somebody could easily underprice your house if they're not paying attention. If it's in a strong seller's market and they're just looking off the last couple sales. Remember I was saying we like to price ahead of the market. So in a price range, let's get back to that slide real quick. In a price range like one of these three right here, again, what I mean is we're pricing ahead of the market. So if the comps tell us the houses are selling for $200,000 and we have less than 1 month's supply of inventory, and your house is probably, the comps are saying it's worth $200,000, why wouldn't we price it at $210,000? Right? There's nothing on the market. There's 6 houses on the market for us to compete with. We can afford to price it a little bit high. Whereas, I kind of alluded to it earlier over here, if you're in this $600,000 to $700,000 range, the cost of overpricing your house is going to be really, really dreadful. I mean, it's going to cause you to sit on the market. In a property with this amount of inventory on it, you might want to price it a little bit lower than the most recent sold comparables. Again, that's what I mean by pricing your house ahead of the market, right? So the market's going to dictate those things, and that's why it's important to have somebody that is a student of the market and really understands that. Okay, so knowing your specific market and then hiring somebody who's an expert negotiator. So I am a certified negotiation expert. It's a designation called CNE. Less than 1% of realtors nationwide have that designation. I just think it's kind of crazy that when you're selling your house, you're literally selling probably your most expensive asset. We're very close to it if it's not your most expensive asset. And you're hiring somebody, in most cases, most realtors have 0 formal negotiating training, okay? So in real estate school, they might talk about negotiating for 10 or 15 minutes. I mean, it's not a long time. So you're entrusting the sale of your most expensive asset to somebody who has 10 or 15 minutes of negotiating training. So this designation is fantastic. It gave me some really good techniques and strategies when negotiating. That being said, there are just some really common sense tips and tricks that I use when I'm selling my homes. Typical things that are sometimes included or sometimes not included would be your washer, dryer, and refrigerator. I always, even if my seller doesn't have any use for them, I always exclude them up front. And the reason why I do that is when we're negotiating your home inspection, if I can negotiate with a washer, dryer, and refrigerator rather than spending your money, I'm going to do that, right? Because that's a value add. If we just say up front, washer, dryer, and refrigerator included, then we come to the home inspection and now we're going to be negotiating with you doing a bunch of repairs or giving credits and that kind of thing. So I like to give us a little head start with the washer and dryer and refrigerator in our back pocket if those things are up for sale or up for negotiation. Other things that people sometimes don't think about, you have a riding mower at your property that you're not going to need at your new home. Okay, that's something that could be negotiated in. Do you have a snow blower that you're not going to need at your new property? Okay, that's something that can be negotiated in. So we just kind of think about other things that people need to get rid of anyway, and if we can use that to help my clients get a better deal during the negotiations, that's a win as far as I'm concerned. Yes?
Well, what's the story on putting contingencies in your agreements now?
Yeah, so
on mortgage, contingent on
yeah.
reports.
Right. So most agreements of sale are going to have several contingencies in them. They're going to have a mortgage contingency unless the buyer is paying cash for the property. Okay. Which basically, when we accept an offer, we are going to get a copy of a pre-approval, and we're also going to get something called a buyer's financial information form, which are going to, it's basically, hey, you say you want to buy this house, prove to me that you can actually afford it, right? So when I'm looking at the buyer's pre-approval, I want to see that they're pre-approved with a reputable mortgage company that I've heard of before. And I also will check, if I've never heard of the company before, or I don't recognize the name on the pre-approval, I'm going to talk to the agent that brought me that offer, and I'm going to say, hey, have you ever worked with this lender before? If they say, oh no, the buyer came to me with this lender, I've never worked with them before. Ding, 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 red flag number one. Okay, not a good sign. Why is that not a good sign? When you work with somebody who a buyer's real estate agent works with a lot, I have a comfort level there. Why do I have a comfort level? Because if they're working with that mortgage person a lot, then that means they have a good relationship. It means that that agent is sending a lot of business to that mortgage broker, and it means that mortgage broker is not going to, they're going to have a vested interest in not messing up that mortgage process. Otherwise, that realtor is not going to get any more business. So that's something that I think is really important. The buyer's financial information form, it's essentially like a shortened form of a mortgage application. It's just going to have some key information in there that I'm going to look through. Where do they work? How much money do they owe? Do they own another property? Is the sale contingent upon the sale of another property? Those are all things that we definitely need to look into. So typical contingencies, you'd have a mortgage contingency, and in most cases you're going to have inspection contingencies. Typical inspections are going to be like a general home inspection, termite inspection, radon inspection, and then depending on the property, they might have a well and a septic inspection if you have those at your home. And then another inspection that's getting a lot of press these days is stucco inspections. Anyone familiar with stucco inspections?
Yes.
Okay.
What is that?
Yeah, so a lot of homes that were built probably in the last 25 to 30 years that have stucco exterior, stucco was not installed properly. And so what happens a lot of times, water gets behind the stucco, it doesn't have any way to get out, and it causes damage behind the stucco. When I say stucco, it can be stucco or stone veneer, which is like the stone facing that they use on newer construction properties. So either the stone veneer or the stucco can have issues. So that's something, now I live in an older home that's stucco. My parents live in a house that was built in 1940s, and it's all stucco. It's stucco over concrete block. Right? There's nothing going on behind that. But when you have framing and stuff like that the stucco is put over, that's when you could have the potential for some issues there. So.
Well, how often can you sign an agreement to buy a new house contingent upon your house selling?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways that you can do that.
Yeah.
So I work with clients that are selling their homes. So if I get an offer and the offer says, hey, we would love to buy your client's house, but we have a house we need to sell first. I'll consider that offer, but it's not a very strong offer because they still need to sell their house first. Now, if they come to me and they say, hey, we'd love to buy your client's house, but we have a house that needs to sell for them to be able to buy yours, but it's already under contract. We have a buyer lined up. This is what our settlement's going to be. And oh, by the way, we've already gotten through inspections. Well, that's a heck of a lot more enticing to me and to my clients because I got a pretty good feeling that this thing's actually going to close and we're going to be able to sell this house too. And then so, going back to that first example, if somebody brings me an offer and their home isn't sold yet, they don't have a buyer for it, and it's not even on the market yet, or maybe it's been on the market for 200 days and hasn't sold yet, and I'm thinking, well, has it been on for 200 days? Is it ever going to sell? So, I mean, in those situations, there's a lot of different options that you can do. So
That's what you said about having the buyers pre-approved and
yes,
you want to see their money.
right.
So that you don't have the contingency of waiting for the other house to sell. Right?
Well, so even if they give us a pre-approval, sometimes a pre-approval will be based on, hey, you're pre-approved for this mortgage, but you still need to sell your other home, right? So like I was going to get into this, so we might as well get into it now. There's always like the conundrum when you're looking to move. If you own a house now and you're looking to buy another house, you got some challenges, okay? If you rent now and you need to go buy another house, it's a heck of a lot easier to do that. Or if you need to sell a house now and you're moving to somewhere where you already own the property or somewhere you're going to be renting or living with family, heck of a lot easier. Anytime you're selling and buying at the same time, there's a lot more moving parts. And we do that all the time for our clients. We can definitely make that happen for our clients. but I always tell them, you need to have a plan B, right? And what I mean by that is, we put your house on the market and it sells quickly, we're going to do everything we can to help you find a new home in the time frame where you can close on the house you're selling in the morning, buy the new house in the afternoon, and get transferred and over in one day. Okay. However, I don't ever want my clients to be in a situation where they sell their house, they're pressured to make a decision really, really quick, and then they make a bad decision on the house that they're going to buy because they only have a short amount of time and there's not that much on the market, right? So I always tell people, have a plan B. Whether that plan B is to move in with family, friends, rent an apartment for 6 months, whatever it is, have a plan B. Most of the time, you don't ever have to go to the plan B, and you're going to be able to find the right house in the amount of time that you have, but it's always good to have that plan B lined up just in case. So, yeah, and so when we work with clients that are both selling and buying at the same time, typically what we'll do, we don't want to run out and show them a ton of houses before their house is on the market. Why? Because if they find their dream house and their house isn't even on the market, someone else is probably going to buy it, not them, right? Because if we don't have their house on the market yet, they run out there, they find their perfect dream house, we make a contingent offer that says, hey, we want to buy your house as long as we can sell ours. We rush to get their house on the market, we get it on the market, and then so what can happen is someone else can make an offer on the house that doesn't have that home sale contingency, and now we get booted out of buying that property, right? So what we like to do is have our clients who are buying and selling meet with me to talk about selling their house, meet with Derek, our buyer agent here, for a buyer consultation. And what Derek will do is just kind of go through their wants and needs and take them out and look at maybe 4 or 5 houses. The reason why you're looking at those 4 or 5 houses is not to necessarily make an offer on one of them. It's just to kind of establish a baseline and a comfort level that, okay, there are some options out here that would work for me if my house does sell quickly, okay? That's really kind of what we do. And then once that happens, we put the house on the market, we pull back their home search in terms of buying, and then once their house goes under contract, then they're going to go out there and start pounding the pavement and finding, the right home for them. So, the other option is some people choose to buy their next house first and then sell their current home. Okay, that's definitely an option, but you have to be in a pretty strong financial position to be able to do that. Because if you have a mortgage on your current home and you're getting a mortgage on the new house, you have to be able to financially qualify to carry both of those 2 different mortgages forever. The bank will look at it like, okay, you have to carry those 2 loans in perpetuity. They assume you'll never be able to sell your house. Okay, pretty pessimistic way to look at it, but that's the way they look at it. So, any questions on home sale contingencies and any of that mess?
I was going to ask if most buyers get pre-approved for a mortgage.
Yes. Yeah, I wouldn't even look at an offer if there's not a pre-approval there. I mean, a buyer's agent in today's market would be totally wasting their time to do that. Now, I can't promise that every single person that looks at one of my clients' houses has a pre-approval, but probably, I don't know, 90% of them do. I have had feedback where people say, hey, we love the house, it's great. I'm still working on getting my buyers pre-approved. I'm like, why are you even showing them houses? Like, it takes 15 minutes to get pre-approved. Like, it's not that hard. I don't understand.
What's like, is there a figure of like what it costs? I had a friend who just moved out of their house, and in her mind it cost her a lot more to do that than they were anticipating. So how much should we be prepared if we're selling to spend? And if you don't want to use credits, you have to save it, you know what I mean, or whatever.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you, how much should you be prepared to spend for?
Well, like say you want to sell your house,
Mm-hmm.
and then your stager might come and say, well, you should do this, this, and this, so that's going
Right.
to cost you money.
Right.
Then you might get something that doesn't work out right in the inspection, that's going to cost you money to fix. Is there a range of like what you should have planned for what that might cost?
That's a good question. I think it's such an individual thing based on your specific property. So if you live in a house that doesn't need any work, it's probably not going to cost you much during the inspection negotiations. And the other thing is with negotiating the inspections, a lot of times we can offer like a credit rather than doing the work. Sometimes we have to do the work, right? In terms of like if somebody comes through and they say, your air conditioner is not working anymore. There's 2 ways you can handle that. You can say, all right, well, we'll put in a new air conditioner before settlement, or we can say, we'll credit you, $3,000 for a new air conditioner. In which case you
Okay.
don't actually have to have that money saved up, it would just
Take it
come
with
out
you.
at settlement, right?
Right.
So that's one way to kind of get around with that in terms of just coming up with extra cash for something like that. But it's really going to be dependent on the specific property. How much does it need? But most of with the staging things, we try to keep those costs down pretty low. I mean, we're not going to recommend anything. We're not going to say, hey, you need to remodel your kitchen, right? I mean, would it be great if the kitchen was remodeled for a new buyer? Sure, but you're not going to get your dollar for dollar return back on a kitchen. So, I mean, kitchens and bathrooms are probably the highest dollar return on what you spend. But you're still, if you put in a new $40,000 kitchen, you can't just jack up the price of your house $40,000. So.
Like, what are the specific things that get you qualified as a buyer? And like, for instance, I'm single, I live in my house, I've been in there 23 years. I'm retired, I have some savings, but would they look at me to buy a house?
Yeah, so to get a mortgage, they're going to look at like your debt to income ratio. So if you're
Zero?
retired, yeah, so if you're retired, that's obviously going to change things quite a bit. So, Derek, what would be your recommendation on that? I mean, if you're retired, they're going to be looking at whatever Social Security income or anything like that that you're coming in. Yeah, but I mean, the other thing is too, if you've been in your house for a while, sometimes the house might be paid for, or when you sell it, you're going to have enough equity that you could buy the new house. So that's going to just depend on your equity position in the house as well.
There's never been a mortgage on it, but it's paid off. And
Right.
the thing is that I don't have a lot of income, so I wondered if I could even qualify as a buyer.
Yeah.
So
Well,
if I could chime in on
yeah.
that, that's a tough one for your situation. We run into certain clients with that a lot of times. With the lenders, they have certain regulations.
By the way, this is Derek Ryan, my buyer's agent. I know a
Yeah.
couple of you came in a little bit
Yeah.
later, so I just want to make sure that he knows what he's talking about. So.
Yeah. So the lender has certain regulations. They have to make sure that your output for debt is under 46% of your income.
I have no debt,
A mortgage would count as a debt.
no debt.
No, if you got a mortgage on a new
Oh, if I
property
got a
that you're
new-
moving into.
Do you
So-
need a new mortgage, or can you?
Okay, well
so
then,
I don't know,
yeah,
I
then,
don't know.
well, you
Yeah,
asked if you could get a
be
mortgage.
a cash buyer then. Yeah.
So if you were gonna be getting a mortgage, then you have to be under certain, like, for even numbers, half of the money you're bringing home can be going out towards revolving debts, student loans, car loans, credit cards, mortgages, right? But if you're gonna buy something in cash, it doesn't really.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got the cash.
You would just
there.
need to
But
sell
I
your
have to
house.
get cash from the sale of my house.
Yeah, and that's totally fine. Yeah, we do that all the time. So it would just be what you would do in that situation. You would do a cash offer that's contingent upon the sale and settlement of your property. If you're making an offer that way, your offer is going to look a lot stronger if your house is already under contract and you have a buyer. But yeah, I mean we do that all the time. So
And
you don't
then
need a
the
mortgage.
problem
if
is
that's the case.
finding a house that I like in that lower range, the first
Yeah.
two ranges.
Yeah.
And that's gonna-
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. And sometimes what we do for our clients, and we can't promise that this is always going to work, but we have a lot of, with the market being as hot as it is, if we have clients that are looking in specific neighborhoods, they love the neighborhood, but there's just nothing on the market, we'll either door knock or call that neighborhood and just say, hey, look, we've got a buyer, we'd love to be in your neighborhood. Have you ever thought about selling? And sometimes we come across people and it works out. I mean,
That's why I get this.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
How does the realtor fee work? Is it a percentage of your house?
Yeah, so the typical real estate commission is like a 6%, and so how that's broken up is 3% goes to whoever represents the buyer for the property, and then 3% would go to the listing brokerage. And then once that 3% gets broken up between the broker and the sales agent, and obviously they like pay their taxes and stuff like that from that. So there's also a 1% transfer tax when you buy or when you sell.
So then it all comes out like it's selling?
Yeah, you don't ever, assuming you have equity in the property, you're not writing a check for any of that stuff. It just comes out at settlement. So, right. And that's one of the things, when I'm meeting with clients who are thinking about selling their house, once we determine what the likely, selling price is going to be, I provide a seller net sheet for them so they kind of understand, okay, here's what my walk away, here's what I'm going to walk away with in terms of my purchase. All right. I think we've talked about every single thing on this slide already. So when selling a home, plan ahead. That's when I talked about, meeting with the stager, a while, 6 months or a year in advance, maybe even longer. Talked about selling first and then buying, or buying first and then selling. The other option is, for some people, Derek and I believe in the wealth building power of real estate. For some people, it might make sense for them to hang on to their current property and use that as a rental property. So that can be a good option for some people as well. Talked about, we didn't really talk about septic too much. So the two most expensive, if you have a stucco home or you have septic, those are the two most expensive things that could potentially go wrong when you're selling a house. We talked about the stucco a little bit. Does anyone have stucco questions? Okay. Septic, does anyone have a house on a septic system? Okay. Yeah, I do recommend, if you've been in there a while, especially to get that pre-certified. That's just, again, it's probably the most expensive thing that could possibly go wrong when you're selling the house. So if you have that, getting it pre-certified just, again, tells the buyer that this is not going to be an issue, and it eliminates any surprises that you would have, in the future. That, oops, my septic failed, and now it's going to cost $25,000 to replace it. So.
And you know of people that do that.
Yeah. If you want to see me afterwards, I can recommend somebody that can help do that for you. We talked about getting a pre-inspection. Does anyone have any more questions about inspections? I know that's always a hot topic. No? We went through that one pretty well. Pricing it right, I think we talked about that. Anyone have any additional questions about pricing? Covered that one pretty well too. And then the last thing is just hiring a realtor whose values match yours. So one of the things, there's a lot of real estate agents out there, and kind of what make people say that what makes you different, Caleb? Why should I hire you to handle the sale of my house? And it's like if you were to hire a carpenter to do some work at your house, any carpenter that you're going to hire is probably going to use pretty much the same tools to get the job done. But you could hire one carpenter and it's a complete hack job, and whatever you hired them to do looks terrible. And you could hire another carpenter who really knows how to use those tools well, and the job looks amazing when they're done. And so I think the same is true of real estate agents. We have access to pretty much the same tools in our toolbox, but it's the way that they're used that makes a big difference. That being said, so what makes me different and what makes our team different is just who we are as people. So our core values are fun. Life is way too short to not enjoy doing what you do. I love being a real estate agent. I love helping people with one of the main decisions that they're ever going to make in their life regarding their home and their housing. And so we have fun doing that. Another core value of ours is responsibility. And so responsibility is big because, anytime you're dealing with relationships, anytime you're dealing with people, whether that's in a family or a business context, people are going to make mistakes, right? And my commitment to my clients is when I'm working with you, if I make a mistake, I'm going to own that mistake. And I'm going to say, hey, look, you're not going to find out about it from some back channel or something. I'm going to come to you and I'm going to say, hey, look, this is what happened. I should have handled it this way, and this is what ended up happening. Here's my plan of how we can get things back on track. And then we'll just have an honest conversation, see what you think about that plan, see if you have anything you want to add to it. And that's really what responsibility means to us. Other core values, integrity is really, really important to us. Just doing the right thing. We're in a business where our reputation is extremely important. And so we want to make sure that we're doing what is ever in our client's best interest at all times. And sometimes that's not going to be in our best interest, but it's going to be in our client's best interest. And that's the thing that makes a huge difference, right? So integrity is really, really crucial in this business. The other things that are important to us, growth. People that we hire on our team, and myself included, we love to grow. We love to read books. We love to listen to podcasts. We love to be around people that are doing new and innovative things in real estate. That's what keeps me personally excited about doing what I've been doing after 14 years. And that's not just real estate. It goes to me being a father and a husband and a leader. I'm looking for ways to get better in all those different aspects every single day. And then last is gratitude is really, really important to us, being thankful and grateful in all situations. And I know sometimes when I wake up in the morning, I might feel overwhelmed by the amount of things that I have to do, or the fires that I need to put out, or the problems that need to be solved. And when I feel overwhelmed like that, sometimes I just need to remind myself to be grateful and thankful for everything that I have in my life, because I am blessed. I have a lot of things going on in my life. I've got a great family. I live in a beautiful house. I get to work with people that I love to work with every single day. I mean, there's a lot of really good things in my life, and I think that, you know, the more you can remind yourself of it. And sometimes these problems that seem so big and urgent, you think about it, is this in 5 years, is this really going to matter? In 5 weeks, is this even going to matter? In 5 minutes, is this good? Well, it probably still matters. But you know, that's just kind of who we are as a team, and that's what we hire to on our team. So I said we have 10 people on the team, and it's been a real growth and real journey to get here, because we've hired some people over the last couple of years that we were excited about. We were excited to have them part of the team, and then 2 or 3 weeks into it, it just becomes really clear that their values are not in alignment with ours, and that's when we need to realize, okay, like, you're a wonderful person, this is not the right place for you, you know? And so I think that's, the longer I've been in this and the more I've been building this team, the more I realize how important it is to be in business with people that share values with you. And that goes for our clients too. If we have clients that have completely different values than we have, we're gonna be pulling in 2 completely different directions. It's probably not gonna work out that well. But when we're working with clients that share similar values, well, then things are gonna click, and it's gonna be a great relationship, and it's gonna be something that, you know, both parties are really gonna really enjoy, you know, going through that process and working together. So, what other questions do you have? Yes.
So I was just curious, in, you know, recent times with Zillow, and people can go online and see the pictures of the houses, like how has that changed as far as, like how do people come to, buyers come to, have they like already seen the houses online, they say, I want to look at this house?
Yeah, so buyers have way more information than they've ever had right now. And I tell people that, like, people say, oh, should we do an open house for the house? And I say, we can if you want to. It's probably not going to sell the house, though. And the reason why is that, I mean, open houses, it used to be like, to look at a house, there were 2 ways you're going to do it. You're going to schedule a private tour with your real estate agent, or an open house. That was it. Now, you can go on Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, a billion other websites. You can look at 25 to 50 pictures of the interior. You can go Google Street Views and see what it looks like from the street. You can go Google Earth, see what it looks like from a satellite image. I mean, you can find out an awful lot about the property before you ever even set foot. I mean, these are things you could do if you were living in, you know, Abu Dhabi, right? I mean, so the people who come to us are much more educated than they ever have been, and I think that's a good thing, because they're coming to us with, you know, more knowledge. Now, a lot of times what will happen is, you know, because buyers might have that information ahead of time, you know, they'll come to us and say, hey, we want to see this house. And Derek works with buyers all the time. We have searches set up for them so that things automatically get sent to them when it's a good match for them. And a lot of times buyers will come to us and say, hey, we really want to see this house. And then we kind of go through the little requirements that they said they wanted, and we say, okay, well, you said you needed a 2-car garage. This doesn't have any garage at all. Is that okay? Do you really want to buy a house that has no garage? And they say, oh, well, yeah, probably not. So, I mean, sometimes you have that, but I think overall it's a good thing. It's just more information to glean, more information to educate yourself. So.
And how's the pricing on Zillow? I mean, they don't know what the inside.
100% accurate, never wrong.
You don't know what the inside of your house is.
Yeah, no, I mean, it can be incredibly accurate and it can be incredibly inaccurate. It really just depends. Zillow, I found, is most accurate if it's a neighborhood with very similar homes that were all kind of like built around the same time and kind of pretty similar square footages. It's usually pretty accurate for that. I've seen it be messed up sometimes. It's far less accurate in a place like if you're in like Phoenixville Borough, right, where you might have a beautifully restored house right next to something that hasn't been touched in 50 years, right? And that's fine, that's okay, but you know, Zillow is going to struggle in those situations. Zillow is also going to be basing their calculations off of dollar per square foot, which, you know, is not my preferred way to look at houses, because you just don't know. You know, it's a computer program, it's an algorithm. You just don't know whether the information they're basing it off of is correct. For example, like when I meet with a client, I'm going to always pull up their property in the county tax records, and it's going to tell me what the square footage of the house is. You'd be surprised how many times that number is completely inaccurate. So that is, if they're basing their figures off of what's in the county records, county office, a lot of times they're going to have, you know, discrepancies just based on incorrect information like that.
But wouldn't that influence the buyer, like, if you're, say you're asking more, and they see, oh, Zillow values it at this, like you're
Right.
charging too much?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely influences people's perception. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I assume that every single person I meet with has already been on Zillow to see what their house is worth on his estimate. Now, does it mean that sometimes their house is worth less or more than that? Absolutely, it absolutely is sometimes worth less and sometimes worth more. But I know that people are, you know, I know people are on there looking. I mean, why wouldn't you look? You type in your address, it spits out a value in 2 seconds. I mean, it's pretty cool. So.
Yeah, the old days, we used to go down to the courthouse at the recorder of deeds, assessment office, at Pathonatory. You could check, you could get all the square feet. So we used to
Right.
go to open houses, then I'd go to the courthouse, and you could check everything, divorces.
Yeah.
You know who you're dealing with.
That information's still there, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
but, yeah.
But
It's a lot
that's-
more work than going
so-
on Zillow.
Yeah, no, but that was the old days,
Yeah,
before
yeah.
the computer. You know, now it's, you type in and you can get all the information.
Yep, absolutely. So,
How
Yes,
about your
Kathy.
boundaries of the property? Because when we bought ours, our neighbor, who has since passed away and somebody else is in the house, told us that like there's a little percentage that was incorrect. Like just a little fence marker, and is that?
yeah, that stuff all happens over time. So in Pennsylvania, there are some states where there is a requirement to get a survey done every time you sell a property. Pennsylvania does not have that. It's extremely rare that whoever buys the house actually does a survey. That is something that they could request as a contingency along with their inspections and stuff like that. So where that'll typically come up when when a buyer purchases a home and they're getting a mortgage, they're going to get title insurance. And so, I mean, they do like a meets and bounds measurement, but I mean, there's probably not anybody like walking off there, go from this stone wall to this pin in the ground or anything like that. So we use it's a site called Chesco Views, which is through the Chester County
GIS.
GIS, yeah. So it's basically, it's not 100% accurate, but if you can type in an address and it'll give you an approximation of what the lot lines are. It's not 100% accurate, but it's a good starting place. Again, you know, it's a good tool to have access.
There's actually a surveyor in Phoenixville who will do your property for you, depending on the size. It varies in terms of price, usually between like $500 and $1,000.
Yeah,
property survey.
I mean, most people don't get surveys unless they're looking to add on to their house, put a pool in, put a fence in. It's amazing how many people put fences in without getting a survey done ahead of time, and then they realize their fence is on their neighbor's property after
I think that's
15
what kinda
years.
happens.
And they went down.
Yeah, well, it's not on their. If you put a fence on your neighbor's property, it's your neighbor's property, I guess, right? I mean, yeah.
There's a property we had some clients see just today, where the property that was for sale had put a fence up about 50 years ago, and it turns out that half of the area they fenced in wasn't actually theirs, and that came up somehow during the inspections, and one deal fell apart. It then came back on the market, and with very clear new property lines that was half the size of the previous backyard. So.
Same with trees too.
Yeah.
One was complaining about a tree, so I went back with the neighbor and I cut away all the weeds, and the marker, the tree was his. So I told him, now you can take care of your, and he did do it.
Yeah.
He did do it.
Yeah.
He says, you know, because it was dying and leaning and all.
Right.
And it was on, he has a pool back there, and so, you know, it was his tree.
Right.
And he never liked walking around his property because it was too overgrown.
Did you ever take
Yeah.
All right.
But
Any other questions?
that's it. But
Okay.
Thank you.
as far
Thank you
as
very
real
much.
estate websites, then Zillow is one of the better ones. For
Zillow's good, Realtor.com's good, Trulia. I mean, those are kind of like probably the three most popular ones right now. So,
How do you spell Zillow or Zillow? Z-I?
Zillo.
W. W.
Oh yeah, W.
Wait, Z-I-L-L-O. Okay.
Sorry.
I failed it. I failed the real estate test. I didn't know how to
Spells
spell it
Zillow.
out.
Human.
I guess like, we've been in our house like 35 years now, probably be in another 10, maybe.
Mhm.
And, so there are certain things we are deciding, like, we want to upgrade our bathroom, and this and that, like
Yeah.
different things. And like, I know some buyers, like, they want things new, but like, you don't want to, I mean, us personally, we don't want to upgrade things and then move right away. Like, if we're
Right.
going to upgrade something, we want to enjoy it and then.
You got 10 years. Upgrade it now and enjoy
Yeah,
it.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. But like, I know someone I work with, they're like, have young kids.
Right.
They wanted, when they were buying a house, they wanted to go into a house not with everything upgraded, and they will upgrade it eventually, but they're getting a better price for them because it's not, it doesn't have the, so it's just
Sure.
it's like a trade-off, it's like personal.
Yeah.
Decision.
I mean, for how many people want a completely upgraded house now versus something that they could
I'd say
remodel and
like
make their own?
1 or 2 out of 10 want a fixer-upper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they want a fixer-upper price too.
Oh yeah.
I'm not talking about
Yeah.
fixer-upper.
Or even a remodel. Yeah.
In terms of the question, like, should I update this just to update it? Well, usually we see like if something's 20 to 30 years old, the trend has changed to some degree and it feels old. But if it's like 10 to 20 years old, like a little bit earlier, it doesn't necessarily like feel old because it's new-ish in terms of the style. Now, ironically, if you look at like things that are like 50, 60 years old, those are back in style, and everything comes full circle, and those are popular again. So
Right. 'cause
Yeah.
you
Hang
know-
on to that pink and black bathroom.
Yeah, the '60s stuff. You got this pink, things in the
Yeah,
bathroom and
sure.
all that.
haven't seen the shag carpet come back to style, but yeah, just the orange.
They have a textured carpet that's pretty popular right now. It's not a full shag, but it's not that
It's
far.
funny, when we go to
Yes.
our house, the first thing, it had a family in it, and we really liked, we had a younger family, so we were like, saw these 4 boys running around. This was 20 years ago, so I don't think they did staging the same as we do
No,
now.
yeah, definitely.
But that appealed to us, like
Right.
seeing the family, seeing how they lived in the house, and thinking, just like you said, you think of that.
If you're frustrated with how much work it is to get your house ready for the market, just blame HGTV.
I was gonna ask if you watched
It's set
the show.
buyer expectations
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
It really has changed things.
I was
So.
gonna ask you if you watch those shows.
No, not too much. Occasionally.
Do you have a business card?
Yes. Mhm. Yep. Yeah, I think we're pretty much wrapped up unless anyone else has additional questions.
And,
I can
and if
say
you could
after.
sign in as well, that'd be great. And that would